Good morning. Mr. International President and delegates, I have the pleasure to introduce the speaker for this morning, Michael Gomes. He is a theosophical historian and author, and a member of the Theosophical Society in America. Since joining the Theosophical Society in 1968 at the age of 17, I hope I'm not revealing his age here, Michael Gomes has remained committed to its ideals. He has gone on to become one of the best-known historians of the movement, as well regarded among theosophical and esoteric groups as he is in academic circles. His publications, which range from new editions of Blavatsky's writings to examinations of contentious events in theosophical history, have contributed toward a better understanding of the modern theosophical movement. Michael Gomes is director of the Emily Sellen Memorial Library in New York City. Joy Mills says, she was quoted before by the president, probably she is here, she said, among the best and most careful researcher into theosophical history, both thorough in method and objective in presentation, is Michael Gomes. She said this in the Theosophist, February 1988. We were working together at ADR more than 30 years ago, and he was doing research at the archives of the TS and preparing a compilation to be published by TPH ADR. The compilation is called HPB Teaches, subtitle An Anthology. But because my English was rather poor at that time, and it still is, I always refer to it as HPB Teaches an Anthology. Michael Gomes.
Bienvenue. Welcome, Theosophists. Welcome to Canada. We are a big country, many cultures, many peoples, but we all have one thing in common. Hospitality is spoken here. So while you are in Canada, have a heaping helping of that Canadian hospitality and share it all. Before I start, can I ask you to do one thing for me, if you don't mind? Would you mind all taking a deep breath and breathing that great Canadian air? Because you'll need it after this talk. So one big ask, it in and let it out. As our Conrad and colleague Pedro has kindly mentioned, I did join the Theosophical Society here in Canada in 1968 at the age of 17, which was the legal age in Canada. I don't know if it still is, but you had to be 17 to join. Our lodge had one of the few charters that was actually signed by HPB, which was great to have. It's so great looking around this room and seeing so many familiar faces. There are no words for old friends whom one has just met. But thank you for having me, and I'm going to talk about a topic that has consumed my life for the past 60 years, which is the history of our movement. And our movement is not like other movements. It has an exoteric side. It has an esoteric side. There is an inner and an outer. We all agree with that. There is an implicit and explicit. Years ago, when I started doing my research, I remember one old theosophist saying, you know, it's really the history of the trials of initiation, because it's not just people went here, did this, some dates. It's about people's lives and their struggle to become aware, to insight and wholeness, which is our theme. And it started so very casually in New York in 1875. A warm summer evening, September, a small group of people meeting in New York. They were there to hear a lecture by a George Henry Felt on the lost canon of proportion of the Egyptians. And to quote one of the people who were there, he said that it was a dry dissertation on geography and ancient mathematics. He was publishing a book, and obviously he was looking for subscribers. And one of the members of the audience asked him, listed all the things that the ancients could do, and asked him, was he able to replicate this with his own knowledge? And he just casually announced that he had been able to make the creatures of the elements appear through chemical means. And Colonel Olcott, who was in the audience, saw an opportunity, wrote a little note, and passed it on to HPB, who was sitting across the room, saying, would it not be a good thing to form a society to study this sort of thing? She nodded her assent, and the next day, September 8th, 16 people gave in their names to support the endeavor. Mainly men, a lot of doctors and a lot of lawyers were there. The second meeting on September 13th, the name of the Theosophical Society was decided on. By the October 30th meeting, the officers were elected. Colonel Olcott as president, Madame Blavatsky as corresponding secretary. The preamble and bylaws decided. And in this preamble, it says, the title of the Theosophical Society explains the objects and desires of its founders. They seek, quote, to obtain knowledge of the nature and attributes of the supreme power and the hidden spirits by the aid of physical processes. So it wasn't just a matter of belief, but they were going to offer a tangible proof to the unseen world. Of course, on the evening of November 17th, Colonel Olcott gave his inaugural address, and this is usually taken as the date for the foundation. This follows the American process of when the president gives his inauguration, that's when it usually starts. So, first thing that happened is Mr. Felt was not able to deliver. And literally after a year, the group floundered. When Olcott gave his anniversary address on October 4th, 1878, not November 17th, there was really little of encouragement to report. And after the meeting in November 15th, the Theosophical Society stopped holding meetings, gave up its rented hall, and the objects, the work of the society was carried on by the council. Now, during this formative period, HPB left the city and she had gone to a town in upstate New York called Ithaca, where she started work on her first book, Isis Unveiled, which was also the first book that was dedicated to the TS itself. And though it's little read today, Isis Unveiled was the mechanism, the means for reaching the public. And having had a chance to abridge the book, to cut out 1,200 pages from an author's work, I can tell you really easily what Isis Unveiled is all about. Simply that there is a road steep and thorny, beset by perils of every kind, but yet a road, and it leads to the heart of the universe. That really sums up all of Isis. Her thesis is there was an ancient universal wisdom tradition shared by all of humanity, and modern religions are echoes and distortions of that truth. Soon as Isis was published, she announced that she was going to India. And of course, for Colonel Olcott, that was a big move. He had 2 young kids. It would have meant a real upheaval in his life. But something happened that really convinced him to go. One evening after their work on Isis Unveiled, so this must be about the proof, say sometime in July of 1877, Olcott is sitting in his room, his bedroom, small room, having a cigar. And out of the corner of his eye, he sees a glimmer of white. And he looks up, and there is his Indian teacher in white turban. He said that they had a long talk. It was shown the work ahead from him. Now, Olcott had lived with HPB's phenomena for so long, he wondered, was this just a hallucination? Was I hypnotized? And as the figure stood up, he unwound his turban and gave it to Olcott as proof. And that headscarf is still that adiro. You can see it usually at convention. It has survived really well for something that's almost 150 years old. So with nothing happening in America, Olcott and Blavatsky left for India at the end of 1878. He says that the first thing he did on landing in India was to touch the ground. He writes in his diary that he writes in his diary that I hate reading a talk, but there's so many facts, so bear with me. In his diary, he says, "The long-awaited moment comes at last, and I am face to face with my spiritual kinsman." And of course, he would live the rest of his life in India, dying there at Adyar in 1907. Those years in India were years of dramatic growth. By 1885, there were 100 lodges in India compared to 4 or 5 in the rest of the world. The publication of B.P. Sinet's Occult World, which was based on his correspondence with the masters, with its opening line that there is a school of philosophy still in existence of which modern culture has lost sight of. And in sequel, esoteric Buddhism, the adherence of the figures like Annie Besant, and of course the appearance of HPB's long-awaited book, The Secret Doctrine, really helped shift the focus to the West. Now, a few months before the publication of The Secret Doctrine, HPB issued a memorandum to members stating that she was going to reactivate the second section of the society. The society had 3 levels at that point: the outer membership, the inner groups that would make a commitment to this work. And she said that it was going to offer members a chance to lead a clean life, an open mind, pure heart, eager intellect, a brotherliness for one's co-disciple, that would eventually lead them, that practice would lead them to the ashram of the masters. She says that her reason for doing this is that, to quote her, that the society proved a dead failure on all of those points which ranked foremost in the objects of its original establishment. It had failed to form that required nucleus. In fact, she even produced a letter from the masters calling it a soulless corpse. Out of the three objects, the second alone is attained. Well, when Colonel Olcott heard this, he was lost his mind. He left India and came to Europe to deal with her about this matter. And while he's off the coast of Italy in Brindisi, he goes back to his cabin and finds the letter from the master. And this is one of the hardest letters to just say was a fraud, dismiss, because he mentions that just now on deck, your thoughts about her, HPB, were dark and sinful, and so I find it fitting to put you on your guard. They end up having a working relationship where she is dealing with the esoteric, he is dealing with the exoteric, the work of the society. But let me just stop here and talk about that esoteric school. It couldn't be to be given more data and more information. I mean, they had just published The Secret Doctrine. How much more did people really want, right? But it was offering a chance for people to form a nucleus. Their relationships deteriorated over the years till by the end of his life, Olcott actually wanted to resign as president and turn it over to HPB. She in turn said she'd resign if he resigned. She died on May 8th, as you know. And in a way, it solved a lot of problems, but it created a lot of new ones. Before we bid goodbye to HPB, toast her, let me tell you something about her, because I've spent so much time with this woman in my life. She actually is the one constant. If my parents gave me physical birth, she gave me my second birth to a realm of ideas. She was a remarkable worker, hard worker. I've never known anyone who could just sit down and write and write and write. Her day starts with a cup of coffee, 7 in the morning, and she just proceeds to write and write and write till the afternoon. Lunch, she complained that it wasn't ready. Of course, it was hours later than when lunch had been prepared. And then sit and write again. Imagine this woman, her only sort of joy, or she would play solitaire, patience, or she would read the Russian papers. The other thing is she really had a really sweet sense about her. It was, one always got the feeling that one just wanted to give her a hug. She would be sitting in that big chair. Annie Besant, when she first met her, Annie Besant, as you know, got introduced to Theosophy by reviewing The Secret Doctrine. And she went to meet the author and thought she'd explain some difficult parts of the book. And HB just talked about commonplace things, and as Annie Besant was leaving, She said, "Oh, Mrs. Vessons, if you would just come among us." And Annie Vessons said she felt this overwhelming urge to just kiss her. And she said, "And you know I am not a kissing person." But she had this thing, of course, men and women didn't embrace in public, even less was a brothel. That's why the hand was always extended by women. But one always just wanted to just give her a hug, because she worked herself to death. Okay, so Olka dies in 1907, as you know. After HPB's death, something happened that would change the dynamic of the society irrevocably. Mr. Judge, who was the vice president of the society and the head of the American section, began bringing through letters from the masters. And people felt uneasy about this, till eventually it was decided to have inquiry about it. Now, it's a crazy thing because Judge and Olcott were both lawyers. They knew what the results were. I think Pedro is the only other person who's seen all of that material in the archives. So a judicial inquiry was had in London. They were going to decide what to do, but of course, the bylaws say that Mr. Judge could only be tried by his own lodge, and Olcott and all the others felt that declaring yea or nay, did Judge forge letters or not, would create a belief in the society. This is why he didn't particularly care for the esoteric school. One group was favored over the other. So they've all decided that for the neutrality of the TS, the matter would be tabled. But somebody leaked this material to the press on a shop today, right? And of course, it just spilled over. The end result was the Indian section in the convention at the end of 1894 decided that Mr. Judge should be removed from the vice presidency if he did not want to leave. The English section was going to vote that way in the summer, but the Americans decided at their convention in April 1895 to declare their autonomy. They were not subject to the rule of Adyar, and even claiming they were the original TS, anything else was something that was formed afterwards. It split the society in a tremendous way. Olcott responded by canceling the charter of the American section, canceling the charter of the lodges that voted for this, and even the membership of the members of those lodges. And it created such instant families. It really was a hard period to go through. The American section called itself the Theosophical Society in America and continued on their own way. Olcott eventually rechartered the section, and thanks to lecturers from England, especially Addie Lesson and C.W. Lettier, who were enormously popular, they helped rebuild the entire section by lecturing around the country. But Lettier was forced to resign because of advocating, do we say that word here? Relief for boys as a proper prophylactic. It's just too much for that. Annie Besant, of course, got elected by a majority in 1907. And within a year, she brought Lettier back into the society. A lot of the members felt, no, this shouldn't be done, and they lost a lot of members in the English section, including someone like G.R.S. Mead, who was a great scholar. But the Leadbeater, who was residing at Meteor, discovered this scrawny Indian kid on the beach who had this remarkable aura about him. Unlike anything he had seen, Jiddu Krishnamurti. And he told this to Blessed, and it ended up with Krishnamurti has found moving on to these states. Krishnamurti was subjected to a rigorous regime of nutrition and exercise. As he said, if you claim that you liked oranges, you have oranges every day for the rest of the year. If you liked a bicycle, a bicycle would appear. They became very reticent about saying what they actually felt. Krishnamurti produced this little book at the feet of the master, and it is truly an encapsulation of the Besant Leadbeater period. He says that this is something the masters taught him during his sleep, and he wrote it down rigorously by hand. Probably the greatest selling theosophical book of all time, in the millions. So they announced that the world teacher had found a vehicle. It was Jiddu Krishnamurti. The Order of the Star was started to help promote the work of the teacher. But in 1929, of course, at a meeting in Holland, he announced that truth is a pathless land, and that no group, no individual, no organization could lead you to that truth. And of course, he continued lecturing, continued his work. This really, again, caused another rift in the society. After Besant's death in 1933, by the way, we have, for those of you who are here, get ready for the next series of anniversaries. 2031 is HPB's bicentenary. 2032 is Olcott's bicentenary. 2033 is Annie Besant's bicentenary. And of course, 2034 is Leadbeater's centenary. So we'll have a very, very busy time. Nobody, of course, is thinking about Mabel Collins, who is coming up, or any of those people. The society tried to reorient itself. It was a difficult position for any president to be in. You couldn't follow the past, and yet you couldn't innovate too much into the future. So the best thing was just sort of carrying on the way things were. George Arundel, who had been a worker with Annie Besant, became president after the siege to Rajadasa, who was the Taluk Sri Lanka, and of course, Dedi Sri Rao. These were years that really tried to deal with a changing world. Of course, you had a great war, a financial depression, and total changes all around the world. After Sri Ram died, he was elected, Jacques was elected as president in 1973. And after his sudden death in 1980, Radhaburnia became the longest serving president of the TS, 33 years. Majority of people who had joined under Radhaburnia's presidency. Those of us who had the opportunity to work at ADR under her, my colleague here will attest, brilliantly intellect, profound Sanskrit scholar, but tough as nails. We tell you, she did not suffer fool's gladly. You may all know her as a great writer, speaker, philosopher, but the thing I remember the most of Radhaburnia is she made a tamarind pickle that was out of this world. Let me tell you, she made a tamarind pickle. In fact, years after, I said, "Do you still make that pickle?" She said, "You remember a pickle?" I said, "Yes, it was that good." And in fact, I told her, I said, you should market this at the TSM that needed money. And he brought us salmon pickle. Of course, she would just give you that look. Of course, Srimati Radhaburnia is followed by Thiru Timboid. I call him Thiru because it's the Tamil honorific instead of saying G. I'm older than him, so I can't really say G, but Thiru works just as well. And I like the idea of Thiru Tim than Tim G, because somebody at a conference said, kimchi, what are they talking? Who's kimchi? I said, no, Tim G. And since Mr. Boyd is still with us, I'm not going to talk about him. I never believe in saying to someone's back what I can say to their face. So this part of the talk will be continued on Sunday, where I'll have a chance to actually talk to Mr. Boyd and talk about the things that are meaningful to him. He's a pretty remarkable guy, I got to tell you. After, say all of us, worked his way up, came in at the 1975 convention, still stayed with it, stuck with it. And of course, his wife, Lily, I won't say the word Lily, but we're very fortunate to have someone who is so aware of the world around us to give us that leadership in these very, very, very difficult times. The world is a mess. I don't have to tell you all of that. And more than ever, it needs a moral compass.
True.
It needs people who believe in ideals and who are willing to live those ideals.
Hear, hear.
In fact, I told Mr. Boyd that we should just do the interview starting with, let's just get that over with now. So, reviewing these 150 years, we can see that certain aspects help define the period. Since the original impetus in 1875 was to provide tangible evidence, scientific proof for this Nicene world, that didn't develop this is the way they wanted it, but it is in our DNA. It is in the way we approach the world. We are not simply believers, but we seek proof for our beliefs. The other great thing that early theosophy did is it reoriented the Western gaze to India. And at that time, India was not India as we know it today. It was separate princely states. The British had parts, French had parts, Portuguese had parts. But they saw India as a whole, a really wonderful thing. And in fact, in one of the early letters from the Mahatmas, probably one of the first, it starts off with this wonderful line. It's not with the regular Mahatma letters. It says, tracing our lineage through the vicissitudes of Indian civilizations to a remote past, we have a love for our motherland so deep and passionate that it has survived even the broadening and cosmopolitizing efforts of our studies in the hidden laws of nature. And then it adds that we are convinced that the degradation of India is largely due to the suffocation from ancient spirituality, and whatever helps restore that highest standard of thought and morals must be a regenerating national force. In fact, the Theosophical Society offered an outlet for many people who wanted to do good for India until the Indian National Congress came, which of course was started by Theosophists. The objects as we know them developed in India. And I'll give you how they first, it was very similar but not the same. To form the nucleus of a universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, creed, or color. Look at the operative word. Nowadays, it's to form the nucleus of a universal brotherhood. Somehow we just sort of get together in universal brotherhood, just self-combust. No, it was something you had to work to form the nucleus, of universal brotherhood of humanity. Second object was to promote the study of Aryan and Middle Eastern literature, religions, and science, and vindicate their importance. And of course, the third, to investigate the hidden mysteries of nature and the psychical powers latent in the individual. Further identification with India happened when Annie Besant moved her home from London to Benares, Varanasi. She became a devoted Indiophile, adapting Indian dress and customs. And Sri Ram, who worked with her, gave this little quote, and it really has impressed me and always stayed with me. She saw the ideal behind the actual, even when the actual had deteriorated. She saw the ideal behind the actual, even when the actual had deteriorated. So in her work in India starts with education, feeling that Indian students should at least be taught something about their own culture. As you know, at that time, it was British rule, and in fact, one of the famous minutes on education from England was, one shelf of English literature is worth all the entire literature of Asia. Can you imagine saying that today? She started Central Hindu College that became the basis of Benares Hindu University. She moved into Indian politics, promoting home rule. She was even interned by the British government in her 80s as being a threat to stability. She was interned at Uttarakhand. Colonel Olcott had bought a retirement home there. And they said, actually, when she didn't have anything to do, she just deteriorated. Her health deteriorated. She was so used to doing and stuff that eventually there was such an outcry and she was released from internment. After Annie Besant's death, Krishnamurti, who had been groomed for a world teacher after her death, was evicted from Adyar, being too radical. One of his lines is, I never left the Theosophical Society. The Theosophical Society left me. He made his home in Ojai, California, where he would live for the rest of his life till dying in 1986, at the age of 9. Were you there in 86 when he gave his last talks? It was 85.
I was not meant to.
Okay. He would give the breaking about conventions in the old days at Adyar. It was like a service economy. You could drink coffee till 10 at night, get ice cream. We all will look forward to it. And after the talks, Krishnamurti would have his events, and Rukmini Arundel would have her events, Kawachitra. And you would go to Krishnamurti's events, and you would say, where did all these young people come from? Well, you never see them at Adyar. But he could draw them in anything. It was rumored that he knew he was going to die. And what was his last talk? Usually he spoke, that is it, get up and leave. At the end of his last talk, he said, since this is the last talk, shall we just have a few moments together? And the silence was deafening. There really was something special there. But just think if we had been able to keep Krishnamurti within the society and all the other members. We have achieved wonderful and great things. Conflict resolution is not among them, unfortunately. Just think of what a dynamic, big society we would have had if Judge had still been a member, if Steiner had still been a member, if Alice Bailey had still been a member, if Krishnamurti. But it was easier to sort of go their own way. And of course, they have enriched other groups. They've given us choice, so to speak. There's a line from a Rohi mail, I don't know how many of you may remember Mr. Beta, a great old stalwart. He said that we are entering a psychological phase in the understanding of theosophy. This is in the 40s. In this age, a psychological approach and presentation of theosophy have become imperative. Mass problems have become greatly intensified at the psychological level. He wants to know whether theosophy can help him deal with these problems. And this, of course, has been the keynote of our time. People are really going through psychological problems, and theosophy offers them that touchstone. So in 1975, hundreds of theosophists from around the world gathered in New York to commemorate the centenary. There was a wave of expectancy. I can remember myself that everybody thought something would happen. In 1975, there would be a new impetus, maybe a new tweet or something. But though many talks were given and many discussions were had, no message came from the Mahatmas. Boris Dezhirkov, who was one of the keynote speakers there, in his talk summarized really beautifully, I think, the work ahead for us. To Boris Dezhirkov. There is a hidden wisdom in the world, a wisdom not apparent to the eyes of men. There is a secret path which leads to that wisdom, and it starts at the very root of your own heart. There is a secret method of living, a course of life, a code of conduct, which provides the necessary conditions for treading that path and enables one to reach the hidden wisdom and make it their own. These three, the hidden wisdom to be attained, the path that leads thereto, and the method of living, are the main keynotes of the message which HPB proclaimed to the world. Aspiring to these ideals, we would keep that link unbroken. HPB's last words were, keep the link unbroken. Now, what's in a link? One of the things Krishnamurti has given us is to look deeper. What's a link? It's transmission coming, but it's also access to something else. We have been asked to keep that link unbroken. Annie Besant, after her election as president of the TS in 1907, was asked in one of her talks about this question: why is the TS attracting so few people? And her answer is really telling, and I'm going to close with that. You cannot measure the growth of a society merely by the number of people that come into it, but by the spread of the ideas for which it stands. Now consider the world of 1875 with the world of thought today in regard to religion, religious, intellectual, scientific questions, and you will find that a great revolution has taken place. The ideas that in 1875 were thought absurd and ridiculous are now becoming commonplace. amongst all well-educated people, the growth of theosophy. And that, to me, is the most important part of our work. The growth of theosophy is very great. Its ideas are spreading everywhere and are being echoed everywhere. This is practical selling. Can you imagine how far we have come? No one will deny that our organization, our movement, for such a small group of people have really leavened the world culture. Karma, reincarnation, spiritual wisdom, all of these things have become commonplace. So I again want to say how great many of you have had great effort making the trip here. The road is long and winding, many a turn. But those of you who are come, I think you will find during these next few days that something special is happening. The talks are there, but it's when we meet, when we interact, that is the real dynamism. That's the real magic that we all hear about, believe in. And it comes by shared ideas, regardless of race, creed, caste, sex, color. So while we are here, meet and greet. It's so great to see so many faces, friends. As I say, there's no word yet for old friends who one has just met. But for many of us, it will be passing of the torch to a younger generation. One of the things that our president has done is to reactivate the young theosophists, and they are doing dynamic work. So let us stand with this. Words have power, but so do thoughts. HPD says right thought is the good thing, but right thought without the right action is pretty well meaningless. Each of us can be a transformative experience in other people's lives, to be there for someone in need, to be there for someone who has lost their way. This is the real magic that we can do. And it starts wherever we are, wherever you are placed in life, to help, as Joyville says, those hands who keep back the darkness from our times. And as I said before, we are living in an age where people really need hope. Who are the great figures of our time? Sports figures, actresses. The ideal of great spiritual people leading the way has almost become non-existent. And each of you can fill that role. Don't underestimate yourself, all the good you can do. Thought is a dramatically powerful thing. In the Mahatma letters, it says that 2,000 years ago, a handful of people in Galilee ended up changing the world. We have more opportunity today to do that good. And of course, methods change. Otherwise, we'd still be studying the Vedas. If truth was just eternal, we'd still be studying the Vedas and not have, but people's needs change. And the stage with wisdom transforms to help people, which is a wonderful thing. So it's all up to you to get it fired up, to take that cause of theosophy and truly make it come alive. Are you willing to do this?
Here, here.
No. What is that? 2 yes no there and no over here? Come on, I can't hear you. Are you living? See that? Now, that's theosophy in action. When we meet, when we express, and it's just not about data and knowledge. I remember hearing our president say, our past president, if data was enough, the world problems would have been solved. already. She also, I'll share with you before I leave, she told me, Pedro knows this story also. She once told me that she had started a little magazine in India for Indians, and the response was just not what she expected. And she was telling this to Krishnamurti, and he said, is it just a question of numbers, or is the thing worth doing? Right? In the Gita, we're constantly told, do the act, let the results take care of themselves. We will never know how they will develop. But to keep theosophy alive, to keep that link, you gathered here, and those of you who are seeing this, you are the hope and dream of those early theosophies. This is what they would hope for, that 150 years later, we are still alive, we are still active, we are still stirring up complacency and conventionality, that we are an alternative voice in the world for good. So I hope at the end of the week you're going to go back and take this energy back and tell all those people, you should have been there. You should have been there. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael, for your soul-stirring presentation. When you read the inaugural address of the president and founder, Henry C. Olcott, in one passage he says, the future historian will not remain indifferent to this movement. He is one. And one of the values of Michael Gomes' work for 60 years has been not to dwell or magnify the asymmetries in the movement. He has acknowledged them, but he has emphasized even now the opportunity that each one of us has to work for the society. And naturally, I don't speak on behalf of the society. Mr. Boyd does. But on my own behalf, I would say that the Theosophical Society owes you, Michael, a great debt of gratitude. Thank you.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. At this point, we want to confer a particular honor on Michael Gomes for the work that he has done over these many decades. Back in 1883, it was determined that there would be an award that would be given to at that time, it was the best essay during a given year. And it was on very specific topics that nobody's writing about today. Later on, it went on to become an award for the best literature related to the Theosophical movement, related to to Theosophy that was produced. It was called the T. Subarro Medal. Subarro was a member in the early days of the Theosophical Society. He died 1 year before Helena Blavatsky died, and he was only 34 years old. But he was recognized by all of his contemporaries as an authority on the ageless wisdom tradition. Colonel Olcott, in fact, said that there was none like him in terms of his genius for the ancient wisdom. Initially, it was supposed to work out that when the Secret Doctrine was written, it was supposed to be written in conjunction with Subarro. It was going to be a redo of the an expansion on Isis Unveiled, and he was going to be the principal person doing the commentary. And this is something that AHPB looked to him in this light. Apparently, when she submitted an initial draft for the secret doctrine, he refused to edit it or comment on it because it was so chaotic. HPB took it to heart, and out of that came the secret doctrine as we know it. But he was someone who was, in the eyes particularly of Colonel Alcott, someone for whom the literature of the theosophical world needs to be celebrated in his name. Since that time, this award has been presented to numerous people: Annie Besant, Krishnamurti, Rudolf Steiner, many others, John Algeo recently, Joy Bells, of course. Don't make me do the whole list, please. It's a long list. But anyway, this year we wanted to present this to Michael, and I just wanted to read just a little note that, dear Michael, over the past more than 4 decades, your contribution to the literature related to theosophy and the theosophical movement has been substantial. In books, articles, monographs, collections you have edited, and academic conference papers, the ideas, people, and history of the TS have been well presented. Particularly in the field of academia, yours has been a special contribution. At the December 2024 meeting of the Theosophical Society's General Council, your name was proposed as a recipient of the Subaru Medal. After discussion, it was unanimously voted to award you the medal. It will be my great honor as co-worker, but also as a friend, to present you with the Subaru Medal in Vancouver. So this time I would like to present to Michael the Subaru Medal. So Michael, could you join me?
Lily Boy says, I cannot say alamak. So I will say in turn, Kya bate, right? Kya bate, how wonderful. And it's humbling to think that the members of the General Council, whose work is keeping the society and its ideals alive, have unanimously voted to present me with this. So thank you very, very much. Makes me just want to work harder, except that usually when they give it to somebody, they die soon after. So sure that, tried this before. Years ago, when John Algeo could no longer do it, he offered me to take over the editing of the HPB letters, and I told him, everybody who's touched that has died. I said, no, that's okay. And of course, he passed it on to somebody else who has died. So gee, thanks, Tim. Have you taken out an insurance policy on me? Is that how it works? But it's truly a wonderful honor to have this. And it's first one in gold, right? Yeah, so can I just thank, where are you? Little. Don't be shy. I'd like especially just to thank Adora Kunz, who suggested I write my first book. I had come back from Edinburgh. She said, well, you've been in the archives. Why don't you write a book? And I had never even thought about it. But when Dora said something, you did it, right? To Radha Bernier, who also published my second book and who chose the title for it. And of course, to John and Emily Sellen, who have endowed our library in New York. So, and of course, to all of you, the song goes, it's people like you who make people like me. So this is not individually my honor, but it's for all of you. And I think the first comedian to get it also. Oh, this one got. Oh, yeah. Harm, it's hard to top this one, but I think I can do something. Look. I would like to present Tim Boy with my own award. And I would like to ask him to release my newest book, which is HPV's, the last volume of the collected writings of H.P. Blavatsky.
She said, Mike is difficult to get rid of. I couldn't get him to take any of those jobs that would terminate him. So he disagreed. I did get him to take this one on. The Russian serials, the last volume in the collected writings. He has been working on this for the last 3 years. And now it's finally being released here while we're all here together. So it's available. I believe it's over here. Yeah. So be the first. Thank you, Mike.
Your book is going to be released.
I don't want to take any of the glow away from your...
But don't worry, not a chance.
Thank you.
Becky, Ed, let me just say that this man is responsible for this book. Without TPH Adyar deciding to produce it, you will find a lot about India. This is what she wrote, not heavy philosophy, but about her observations of life in India. You will find it very fascinating. But I thank Mr. Boyd for making this happening and taking up 3 years of my life. So
Glad to do it.
and thank you.